It happened so fast that I didn't register it until the sting hit my cheek and the entire restaurant fell silent. One moment, I was sliding past her chair to return from the restroom, and the next, the sound cracked through the private dining room like a gunshot. My stepmother had slapped me, hard, in front of everyone. Then she leaned in, her breath warm and bitter against my ear, and hissed, "You're just like your mother." I froze, my face burning, not just from the slap, but from the humiliation, from the betrayal. I turned to look at my father, sitting just 2 chairs down, fork hovering above his plate. He didn't even look up. He was staring into his mashed potatoes like they held the secrets of the universe. Nobody moved. Not Lydia, my stepmother's daughter. Not the waiter who had just set down a tray of bread. Not my uncle, not the cousins, not the old family friend who used to call me kiddo. It was as if everyone had collectively decided to pretend they hadn't seen what had just happened. And my father, my only parent left, was the loudest in his silence. That's when I knew something inside me had shifted, not broken. Broken would have been easier to fix. This was worse. This was something unraveling, thread by thread, until there was nothing left to hold on to. I didn't say anything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just turned and walked out. The heels of my boots clicking against the tile were the only sound that followed me out the door. I didn't stop in the lobby. I didn't stop in the parking lot. I got in my car, turned the ignition, and drove without really thinking. 20 minutes later, I was sitting on the edge of the bed in my Airbnb, coat still on, hands still shaking. I stared at the floor for a long time. The city outside buzzed with a Friday night rhythm. Cars, laughter, footsteps, distant music, but none of it reached me. That dinner was supposed to be a gesture, a peace offering, a stupid, naive hope that maybe, just maybe, I could have one night where we pretended to be a normal family. It was my father's 60th birthday, a milestone. I hadn't been home in over a year, and before that, maybe once or twice in passing. We kept in touch through polite texts, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, but we hadn't really talked since I was 22. I thought maybe showing up would mean something. Maybe if I smiled enough, dressed right, stayed quiet, I could survive the night. The restaurant was some trendy place off Pearl Street, upscale Italian, dim lights, moss art on the walls. Our party filled half the private dining room. I had been seated near the end of the table, close to Lydia. We'd never been close, Sabrina made sure of that, but that night Lydia looked tired, older, like she was carrying something heavy. She even smiled at me once. A real one, not the fake polite kind. I remember thinking, that's new. We were halfway through dinner when it happened. I had gotten up to use the restroom and was returning to my seat. A waiter passed by with a tray of drinks, and I instinctively shifted to the side to avoid him. In doing so, my shoulder lightly brushed the back of Sabrina's chair. Barely a nudge. Not enough to spill a drink or jostle her plate, but it was enough for her to feel it, enough for her to unleash everything she had been holding in for years. The slap wasn't about that moment. It was about every moment before it, every eye roll, every disagreement, every time I refused to play along with the story she'd written for our lives. And the words that followed, "You're just like your mother." They weren't meant as an insult to my mother. They were meant to wound me. Deeply. They did. But what stayed with me, what still keeps me awake some nights, was the way my father sat there unmoving while it happened. Like it was routine. Like it was acceptable. Like I was the one making a scene by existing. For a second, I waited for him to say something. To look at me. To blink. But he didn't. He didn't even flinch. And I knew in that moment that I was done pretending. My mother died when I was 16. Ovarian cancer. It was long, slow, cruel. The kind of illness that eats away not just at the body, but at the soul of a house. She held on as long as she could, always smiling through the pain, still packing my school lunches and tucking notes into my coat pocket that said things like, "Be kind today," or "Don't forget how bright you are." I used to pretend I was annoyed by them, but I kept every single one, Even now, they're folded inside a small metal box in my closet. The last one she ever gave me simply said, "You're enough." She passed in late autumn. The trees were still holding on to their leaves, like they hadn't gotten the news yet. I remember the funeral was small, mostly close friends, some neighbors, a few old colleagues of my dad. I stood next to him while he greeted people, my hands cold even in gloves. He didn't cry, not once. I told myself that was strength, that he was holding it together for me. But the truth was, something inside him shut off. And just like that, our house went quiet. What I didn't expect was how quickly the silence was filled. By spring, she was there. Her name was Sabrina Lowell. She had worked with my father back when he was still teaching business ethics at the university. I vaguely remembered her. She always wore navy blazers and stilettos, even on casual Fridays. She had a way of tilting her head when she listened, like she was always calculating something, and a voice so calm it made you feel rude for disagreeing. She came over once, then again, then suddenly she was there all the time. First, it was helping Dad get back on his feet, then organizing the pantry, repainting the walls, rearranging furniture. Within a few months, she'd moved in. No conversation, no permission, just presence. And with her came Lydia. Lydia was 5 years younger than me, from Sabrina's first marriage. She was the golden child, the polite one, the one who called my father Dad within a month and got extra helpings of dessert. She was everything I wasn't: compliant, quiet, wide-eyed. I didn't blame her. Not then. Not yet. At first I tried. I really did. I said, "Good morning," helped set the table, smiled when Sabrina brought home new pillows and said they'd soften the energy of the living room. I tried to ignore the way she'd sigh when I left dishes in the sink or tell my dad I was grieving too selfishly. I told myself she just didn't understand me yet. But it wasn't misunderstanding. It was calculation. She started slowly, subtle jabs disguised as concern. "Claire seems withdrawn. Claire's a bit moody these days. Maybe she needs counseling. I mean, grief can make teenagers so reactive." And every time I pushed back, I could see the wheels turning behind her smile. Every time I raised my voice, she'd go quiet and let my father do the disciplining. He never asked for my side, never once said, "Claire, are you okay?" It didn't take long before I stopped speaking altogether. I went to school. I came home. I did my homework in my room with the door closed. I wore headphones to dinner. I applied to colleges without telling anyone. I got into a state university, 6 hours away. I accepted the scholarship before my father even noticed the acceptance letter on the counter. When I told him I was leaving, he said, "That's probably for the best. A fresh start might help." A fresh start. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and left the same week. No going away dinner. No hug. Sabrina didn't even come downstairs. I remember standing on the porch, watching my father sip coffee at the kitchen table, and wondering if he'd ever really seen me. I didn't look back when I drove away. I just drove faster than I should have, windows down, hair whipping in the wind like I was running from something that might catch up if I stopped for even a second. And for a while it worked. I built a life. I got my degree, found a job in publishing, rented a studio apartment with peeling wallpaper and mismatched silverware. I went to therapy sometimes. Mostly I worked. I stayed busy. That's what people said to do. Keep going. Keep moving. But what they never tell you is the silence doesn't go away. It just waits. For a dinner. For a slap. For a moment when everything you tried to bury comes clawing back up through the surface, demanding to be seen. That night, sitting on the edge of my rented bed in a city that no longer felt like home, I realized something. I hadn't run far enough. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, coat still on, staring at nothing. My cheek still burned faintly where her hand had landed, but the heat had moved deeper, into the parts of me I thought I'd numbed years ago. I opened my laptop without really knowing what I was doing. At first, it was just going to be a journal entry. something to pour the venom out of me. But the more I typed, the more I realized how much I had kept inside. The slap was just the final insult. The real pain had been happening for years, silently, and I had carried it like a secret no one wanted to hear. I didn't use real names. I changed the city, blurred the timeline, and posted it under an old account I hadn't touched since grad school. The subreddit was one I'd followed for years, r/raised by narcissists. I'd read other people's stories late at night, feeling seen without ever having to speak. This time I spoke. I described the dinner, the slap, the way my father stared at his plate like it was a script he didn't know how to rewrite. I talked about my mother, how gentle she was, how fast she disappeared. I told them about Sabrina moving in before the dust even settled, about the silence, the slow erasure of my place in my own home. I ended the post with a single sentence. I left that dinner like I left that house years ago, unseen. I closed the laptop and didn't check it again until the next afternoon. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a few comments, a couple of upvotes, some stranger saying, "You're not crazy," but it had exploded. Thousands of upvotes, hundreds of comments, people sharing their own stories, people saying they believed me, that they'd lived through the same kind of slow suffocation, that silence is a survival tactic, that not reacting doesn't mean nothing happened, it means everything happened. I sat there reading them, eyes burning, not from pain, but from something close to recognition. For the first time, I wasn't just the difficult daughter. I was someone whose story made sense. And then, I saw it, a private message, from a username I didn't recognize at first. But the profile picture, barely visible, was of a coffee cup on a marble countertop I'd seen 1,000 times before. My stomach twisted. Lydia. The message was short. No punctuation. No flourish. Claire, I read your post. I know it's you. And I believe everything. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, pretend I hadn't seen it. Another part, the louder one, was curious, maybe even hopeful. We met the next morning at a little cafe near Pearl Street, the same street where the dinner had imploded. It felt fitting. I got there early and waited by the window, watching pedestrians stroll by with dogs, coffee cups, puffer jackets, zipped up to their ears. And then she walked in. She looked nothing like I remembered. No makeup. No curated curls. No designer scarf. Just a hoodie and jeans and dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She looked like someone who'd been through something real. She sat down across from me without a word. And for a moment, we just stared at each other. Two people who had grown up in the same house but never shared the same version of it. Then she spoke. "I didn't know," she said softly. "Not really." I didn't say anything. I didn't trust my voice to hold steady. She always acted different around me. I thought she was just strict with you, or that maybe you were just difficult. That's what she said. She said a lot of things, I said. Lydia nodded slowly. But that night, when she slapped you, something cracked. Everyone saw it. The way she looked at you, like you were a threat, not a person. And Dad, he didn't even blink. That's when I knew this wasn't about a chair. It never was. It wasn't an apology. It didn't need to be. It was something better. An alignment. A fracture finally acknowledged. "She's been controlling everything for so long," Lydia continued. "Even me. I didn't realize it until I moved out. Even then, I thought it was just how she was. But I see it now. I see it all." She paused, looked down at her coffee cup, then back at me. "Do you still have that post?" "Yes." "Then let's do something with it." I blinked. "Like what?" Her jaw tightened. "Not revenge. Just truth." We didn't tell anyone we were coming. Not Dad. Not Sabrina. We waited until they returned home from that same dinner, full and tipsy, expecting silence and leftovers. Instead, they walked into a living room lit with soft lamps and quiet determination. Lydia was already there, seated on the couch, shoulders back like she had rehearsed this. I stood by the fireplace, arms crossed. In front of us, on the coffee table, sat a thick folder, cream-colored, unassuming, but inside it was everything. The moment the front door opened, I felt something in the air shift. Static, like the room was waiting to inhale. They entered mid-conversation. Sabrina talking, Dad nodding absently, keys jangling in his hand. When he saw us, he froze, keys still in midair, eyes darting from me to Lydia to the folder. Sabrina took one look at the setup and stopped talking. Her expression didn't change at first, but her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. She already knew. She always knew. "What is this?" Dad asked, voice lower than usual. He didn't sit. Not yet. He just stared at the folder like it might bite him. "Something you need to see," Lydia said. Sabrina's expression hardened. "More drama," she said, voice sharp. "Really?" No, my voice was calm. Cold. Just the truth. Dad looked at me, then at Lydia, then slowly moved toward the couch. He sat down, reached for the folder. The first page was a printout of the Reddit post. I had removed any usernames, adjusted details to protect others, but the heart of it was intact. The dinner, the slap, the years leading up to it. He read in silence, page after page, each word draining the color from his face. His hands trembled slightly as he turned the sheets. Pink, pale, then something closer to ash gray. Sabrina stood nearby, arms folded, lips pressed into a thin line. I could see her scanning the room, already calculating the angle. She was always 2 steps ahead until now. "This is absurd," she finally snapped. "You're both being ridiculous. She's always been like this. Dramatic, vindictive, obsessed with painting me as the villain." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Lydia leaned forward and turned the next page for Dad. A screenshot of a text Sabrina had sent 2 years ago. "Your sister will always be a problem until your father finally sees her for what she is, an ungrateful version of her dying mother." The silence that followed was the kind that throbbed in your ears. Dad read the message once, then again. Sabrina flinched, just slightly, when she realized which text it was. "That was taken out of context," she barked. "It was a joke, a bad one." "Do I look like I'm laughing?" Lydia said, voice steady. Dad kept flipping. Letters, handwritten, from my mother. Ones I'd found tucked in a drawer, sealed in an envelope marked for Claire someday. She had written them during her last summer. In one, she described feeling uneasy about Sabrina, that the friendship had shifted, that she sensed something deeper. "I'm afraid for Claire," she wrote. "If I'm not here, who will protect her?" My father stared at the letter for a long time. Then he closed the folder. Sabrina saw the opportunity in the silence and lunged. "She's poisoning you," she said to him, gesturing toward me. "She's always been jealous. She's held on to this twisted version of the past because she can't move on." "She didn't slap herself," Lydia said quietly. Sabrina's eyes narrowed. "You're siding with her now? Don't think I haven't noticed how cold you've been lately." Her tone had shifted, less defense, more offense. It was her signature pivot, divide and conquer. "I'm not siding," Lydia said. "I'm remembering." And then she looked at Dad. "That night," she said, "was the first time I saw who you really are. The way you looked at Claire. Or didn't. Like it was normal. Like she deserved it." Still, Dad said nothing. His jaw clenched, his breathing shallow. Then finally he stood. Not fast, not dramatic. Just stood, like someone shedding an invisible weight. He turned toward Sabrina. "You told me Claire was exaggerating," he said. "That she was difficult. That she couldn't accept you because she was angry at the world. She was—" Sabrina spat. "She left because she couldn't stand not being the center anymore." "She was 16, he replied. Sabrina's face twisted. "I gave everything to this family," she said. "You think I tolerated her attitude, your silences, Your guilt for fun? I carried this house while you wallowed." He didn't respond. She waited. Still nothing. And then she picked up her purse. "This is pathetic," she said, voice shaking now. "I'm done here." She walked out, slammed the door behind her. The sound echoed. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt final. Dad sat down slowly. Lydia curled into the corner of the couch like she used to when she was a kid. And I just stood there. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the need to explain, to defend, to beg for someone to believe me. Everything had already been said. But the hardest part was just beginning. We didn't hear from her for a few days. The house was quiet in the way old houses get quiet when something ugly has finally left. Less haunted, but not healed. Dad moved slowly, like someone relearning how to move through his own space. Lydia came by every other day. We didn't talk much. It was too soon for words. But we stayed, and that meant something. Then the letter arrived. Cream envelope. No return address. Legal formatting. Thick paper. My name wasn't on it, but Dad called me the moment he opened it. "She's not finished," he said. And she wasn't. Sabrina had filed for legal separation, and with it came a list of demands so bold I laughed when I saw them. She wanted spousal support. She wanted full ownership of the house. And she wanted, bizarrely, my mother's antique teacup collection. Hand-painted porcelain pieces passed down from my great-grandmother. She claimed my mother had gifted them to her before passing. She said that. I asked, stunned. "Put it in writing," Dad replied, holding up the letter. It was audacious, absurd, and yet it was exactly like her. When emotional manipulation failed, she went legal. When shame didn't work, she went for entitlement. But this time, she underestimated what we had. Lydia reached out to a friend, Samira Patel, a family law attorney who specialized in high-conflict separations. She came over that same afternoon. Late 30s, blunt-cut hair, no-nonsense energy. We laid it all out. The timeline, the text messages, the letters, the diary entries, the estate records, and most importantly, the deed. "The house was purchased before your father married her," Samira confirmed. "There's no co-ownership, no transfer, no legal claim to the property." "And the teacups?" I asked, half expecting her to roll her eyes. Instead, she smiled. "Do you have any documentation?" she asked. I did. When we cleared the basement last month, I found a box labeled in my mother's handwriting, for Claire when she turns 30. Inside was an itemized inventory of valuables. Next to each one was a name. The teacups? Claire Jennings. Samira nodded. "This isn't going to go the way she thinks." We didn't tell Sabrina. We waited. Mediation was scheduled for the following week. She arrived early. Beige suit, hair in a tight bun, a lawyer at her side, a younger man with nervous eyes and a stack of folders he barely glanced at. She didn't look at us. She didn't need to. Her confidence was radiating like perfume. Until Samira began. She opened with the Reddit post, sanitized, anonymized, but printed and included in the packet. Attached was a signed statement from the family therapist Lydia and I had consulted, detailing the emotional distress, the trauma, the years of suppression. Then came the photos, the texts, the letters, the estate document from my mother, the deed, each item laid out one by one, like a quiet reckoning. I watched Sabrina's face carefully. She didn't react at first, but as the stack grew higher, I saw the tension shift in her jaw. Her lips pressed together. Her knuckles turned white where they gripped the arm of her chair. Samira's tone didn't change once. "We are willing to resolve this quietly," she said. "No public dispute. No further legal pursuit. But it must be on record that she receives nothing from the house. None of the items listed in the will. And no spousal support." Her tone sharpened. "If she declines, we are prepared to countersue for emotional damages, wrongful interference with estate assets, and intentional infliction of distress. We will also submit the full documentation to relevant family and community contacts as necessary." Sabrina didn't speak. Her lawyer leaned toward her, whispered something. She didn't look at him. She looked at my father, who didn't look back. That was the moment. Her mask cracked, not from guilt, not from sorrow, but from realization. There would be no negotiation, no spinning, no performance. This was the end. She nodded once, and just like that, it was over. The weeks that followed were quiet, not empty, just still, like the dust had finally settled. But instead of revealing ruins, it showed the shape of something we hadn't really seen before. What we'd lived in for years wasn't a home. It was a performance, and the curtain had finally dropped. Sabrina moved out of town. We heard she was staying in a condo near Lakewood, spinning her side of the story to whoever would listen. But fewer people were listening now. Too many had seen the truth. And the house changed. Dad started therapy. Voluntarily. He called me once a week, sometimes twice. We didn't always talk about deep things. Sometimes it was just about the weather, a memory of my mom, or a recipe he tried and ruined. But something about the way he listened now, present, open, felt like the father I used to imagine he could be. Lydia and I grew close in a way I never expected. We were never meant to be sisters, not in the world Sabrina tried to build. But once we stripped that version away, we found something real. We started going through old photos together. She showed me the postcards she used to hide under her mattress. I let her read my mom's letters. We cried over the same losses. And for the first time, we weren't alone in them. One afternoon, we took the antique teacups out of their box. Delicate porcelain, hand-painted roses, initials etched in gold at the base of each cup. MJ from Margaret Jennings, my mom. Lydia brewed herbal tea and handed me one carefully. We sat by the window, legs curled up like kids sipping in silence. "I used to think you were the strong one," she said suddenly. I looked over. "You left. You got out. I thought you were angry and cold, but you were just trying to survive." I didn't know what to say. For so long, I'd carried the label of the difficult one, the moody daughter, the problem. Hearing her say that felt like someone handing me back a piece of myself I'd almost forgotten. My dad never asked us to move in, but one evening, as we stood in the kitchen drying dishes, he turned and said, "I want you to have part of this house." I blinked. What? It's what your mother would have wanted. It's what I should have done a long time ago. A week later, the paperwork was signed. 50% transferred to me. There was no celebration, no champagne, no social media post, just quiet, and that was enough. No revenge speech, no public takedown, just the truth, laid bare and standing firm. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just the silence that follows after the lie collapses, the peace that settles in when the truth is finally allowed to breathe. Sometimes revenge is drinking tea out of your mother's porcelain cups in the house someone tried to steal, your name on the deed, your sister in the guest room, and knowing they can never take any of it away again.